Hey everybody, it's Kyle Jetzel, your driven dad. So recently I was having a conversation with a lady who was struggling with what she called her own childhood trauma. And I was kind of curious about it. So I started asking her questions about and basically asked her to share with me some of the things that she feels like had created trauma in her life. And as she started to share some of these things and express kind of some of the feelings she was having and the experiences she was having, she kind of got on a roll. And she was going through all these experiences with her mom and with her dad. And then after about 15 minutes, she stopped cold. And I was like, I didn't know what was going on for a moment until she said, "You know what, Kyle? Now that I've described what had happened to me, I realize that I'm doing some of the same things to my son." And I said, "What?" And she said, "Yeah." She said, I'm as I look back, I'm realizing that I've screamed and yelled at my son. I realized that I've used guilt on my son. I've used shame on my son. I've used, fear of harsh and unusual consequences on my son. And she said, "Oh my gosh, I think I'm repeating the cycle." And it was really interesting to watch her make these statements. And then, we kind of got into a discussion right then because it prompted some thoughts in me. And some of those thoughts were this. And she had said this earlier in our conversation. She said, I'm glad she has a very challenging son who's defiant. He doesn't, well, I'll just say challenging son. You know what I mean by that, right? And and she she indicated to me that he knew how to press her buttons, he knew how to get her upset, he knew how to get her off kilter, he knew how to make her scream and yell. It was like it was like he was doing all these things to get under her skin. And she had said, I'm really glad that I can separate my son and the love I have for my son from his actions. And so I'm able to do that. And so that keeps me loving him. And thank goodness we as parents are able to separate our kids' decisions and actions and behaviors from who they are and still love them. And I said something just out of the blue that really got me to thinking, and that was this. Just because we as parents are able to separate our kids from their actions and from their behaviors and from what they say and what they do doesn't necessarily mean that our kids are capable of separating us as parents from our actions and our behaviors and the things that we do. And I think during that conversation that she and I just had, she was realizing that as a child, she was not able to separate her parents and the love she had for her parents and the love they had for her from their actions and from their behaviors and from the consequences they applied and from the same things, the guilt and the shame and the punishments that she had experienced. And I think it was eye-opening in two ways for both her and for me. And the first way was, sometimes as kids it can become easy for us to look back and think that somehow or another our parents failed us somehow, not because we don't as kids typically have the ability to separate our parents' love from their actions and behaviors and how they react and all the things they do, unlike when we become parents and we can separate it. And so as we finished up the conversation, she said to me, and I thought it was really profound. She said, "You know what? I think my actions and my behaviors and my reactions and the way I punish him or shame him or guilt him or make him feel fear," she said, "I may be doing to him what my parents, I feel like, did to me, which is causing childhood trauma." And I said, it's an interesting thing to think through, but it's very harsh and it hurts. It hurts. It hurt my heart because I know there are times when I've made decisions, when I've said things, when I've done things that if my child is not able to separate what I've said and what I've done from my love for them, they will think that's who I am and they might experience childhood trauma too. So this is kind of a stream of consciousness uh, thing I'm doing right now. I didn't really know what I was going to say and I didn't really have a plan. But as I'm thinking through it, I'm wondering if our kids can't make that disconnect, like we can as parents, right? As parents, we can look at our kids, and when they misbehave, when they act crazy, when they do things they shouldn't, we can separate them from those actions. And we can separate them from what they say. We can separate all that because we love them deeply, and we always will no matter what. But maybe our kids can't do that. And I know as a kid I couldn't. And it took me years and years to finally realize that my mom and dad loved me tremendously, and the things that they were doing was because they were loving me. They didn't always do it the right way, and I don't either. As a parent, I don't think any of us do, but it's really something to consider. Are we, through our actions or our behaviors, if our kids can't separate us uh, from our behaviors and our actions and what we say and what we do and how we act, could we possibly be creating childhood trauma for them, just as some of us feel like we had childhood trauma growing up? It's a question that we might want to ask ourselves. It's a hard question, but it's something to consider, and hopefully you'll consider that. And I want to hear feedback. If you have feedback, let me know what you think. I'm curious to see what other people think. Have a great day. Bye bye.